Hi everybody. So we're going to get started taking a look at everybody's chosen design plus the two different color schemes that you have worked with. And yeah, I don't think I've been able to, as unfortunately Bridge doesn't always show me all of the designs we have. Let me see if I can get a few. I'll just go from the bottom here too. So we've got the different samples that we're looking at, and yeah, and so this just particular part of the final project just shows us once again the possibilities of color to change a design. You know, you've got two different harmonies here, and just kind of thinking about, hey, which one looks best with the design, with what I want to do with the design. I think the further you go in design, the more criteria you might have for the colors in terms of, you know, looking at the colors and thinking, I should be using a lot of cool colors because I want to convey this mood, or I need a lot of kind of saturated warm colors because I want it really lively and energetic. You know, you kind of start learning about what you want to say with color. And so this is really just a part of the journey of learning about color and seeing how we can work with color to make our designs project what we want them to project. So we're only doing two different harmonies here, two different possibilities, but in your own work, you know, you can really just explore as much as you want, you know, on your own. If you were doing a design for a client or for school, you know, you could do 10 different harmonies and, you know, evaluate them. And one of the wonderful things about working in a digital medium is that it's pretty easy to start changing color, isn't it? You know, you can just go in there and start changing your harmony. And we can also back up copies of harmonies so that you can just save your file over and over again with new variations of colors. So it's really, it's a, you know, great thing to be able to work in the software with color. Makes it so much easier. Okay, I think that's all I wanted to say. You know, at this point, what we're just going to do is talk a little bit about the color choices, if there's anything we need to change, and also, you know, which color harmony maybe best suits the subject matter that you have. A lot of times that's a personal choice, but maybe we can sort of reflect a little bit upon that. And then what you're going to do now at this point after this assignment is you're going to choose one of your harmonies and develop it a little bit more. Like you may at this point develop the design a little bit more. You know, we'll talk about that if there's anything we can do to maybe push the design a little further, push the color a little bit further. But you'll be doing that with one of the designs for your final assignment later on for milestone 5. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, Delta. All right, so let's see here. You have the design with the circles. I like that, was a nice choice. And it looks like you're working with an analogous here and a complement. Great. Those are two very different harmonies. We can really see a lot of difference between them. You know, you can, we talked a little bit about analogous and what I think of as the characteristics of analogous, which is it just tends to be, it's very harmonious. I mean, all of the color harmonies are by nature, they have a harmony to them, but the analogous is a lot, I think of as a lot sort of gentler, more organic, because we're like working with these adjacent colors here. So they have a lot in common, don't they? Whereas across from the color wheel, we get a larger contrast and more of that push and pull kind of effect. So I don't know, I like both of these. This one's, you know, also based on warm colors, so you've got a lot of warm, vibrant colors, and this is kind of cool and warm, which is interesting. What I like about this one is I like a little bit more of the contrast that pull these shapes. You know, they make the shapes a little bit more crisp, which I think is something you could do here anyhow. Like it's not, like you could make this a little lighter right here. Maybe you could use this color in there so that your shapes are a little bit, they stand out a little bit more. So I might play with that. And maybe add a few more shapes in here. It still feels like you could perhaps build this design a little bit more. Again, this to me feels like a lot of kind of empty space in here. And what could you do in here? Like maybe you could fill this in here. Like, you know what I mean? Like you could take this kind of idea of breaking the squares apart, or maybe you could add a lot of dots or concentric circles, but you could kind of experiment a little bit more with your design. Let's see what you said here about these. Okay, so Yeah, I think both of these harmonies could work. You know, to me, they both seem really good choices for your designs. So I would just choose the one that you like the best, maybe the complement or the analogous. They seem like, again, they seem like good choices. Um, and maybe just, it seems like there's some kind of line that happened in here. Can you see that dark line? I don't know if that was accidental because it doesn't seem like it's here, you know? So I might just play with that a little bit and play with the design in the suggested ways that I mentioned. But yeah, again, both of these color harmonies I think could really work to keep developing. Evan, okay, let's see. You had, I think, here was your previous assignment. Yeah, I probably won't say too much about your previous composition because you've already made your choice here. Let's see if there's anything overall I could maybe suggest here. Hold on a second here. Full shapes looks like a pattern here. I think that looks great. I think you know, these look well crafted and are going in a good direction. I think they're good. I think you could push them a little further by just breaking apart the space a little bit more, like just adding more complexity, you know, like maybe adding more dots, breaking this apart in different sort of geometric ways, you know, just different things that you could maybe stay within, you know, like repeat these dots in different places, or um, maybe add some breakups of these spaces in here. Just the more complexity you have in your design, I think the better your addition of color will be. And also, I just think it makes the design a little bit maybe more interesting. So, okay, so looks like you've chosen this one. So that's what I would say here about the composition, is to just maybe, you know, I always you probably hear me recommending this, like maybe add some circles within circles here, or, you know, um, that's probably where I'd go here. Maybe you could break apart this space a little bit more, you know? So, yeah, experiment a little bit more. So, because that way it'll allow you, because right now you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 swatches here, and it would be nice, like, of the colors here, and it'd be nice to get more in there, like more variation of the hue and saturation of your harmony. So it looks like you've got a complement and a triad. I would take that black outline off. You've probably heard me mentioning that before. I don't know, what do you think? What was your favorite? Let me see what you said here. I'm kind of, I think both of them are, I think that right now this is maybe a little more successful, but I do kind of like the triad idea. I think you could work with this a little bit more. The reason why I think this is more successful is I think your background is working really well. You've got that sort of darker background, which I think is working, and this maybe is a little brighter. Like if I went with this, I might go with a darker, you know, magenta. Don't feel like you have to work within this particular swatch palette. Like if you really want to go with, like, for example, I'd probably recommend going with a darker purple in the background, or, you know, maybe a toned out purple. Feel free to add that, you know, if you want to go outside of just these designated swatches. As long as it's within your harmony, then that's okay. But that, I might play with that a little bit more. But I think both of these could work. So yeah, I would choose the one you think is maybe the you know, the one you just enjoy more. Yeah, I like these changes quite a lot in your design. I think that you've really taken it to the next level. And yeah, I also think that you know, you've got these, what I'm always looking for at this point is that your two harmonies are quite different, in the sense of really exploring different types of harmonies. Like you can, you know, you can often take the same harmony, like, or a different harmony, and if you use sort of similar hues, they can end up looking the same. But so it's good to actually also make your hues different. So like this, so this one's got reds and blues and greens, and this one is purples and kind of greens and sort of a yellowy sort of green and a purple. So this one is, let's actually just open this up here in Photoshop. Okay, so yeah, so a tetrad and a triad. Yeah, you know, I think they both look good. I'm kind of leaning towards this one. There's something really nice about the combination of greens here with purples and then the red. I think that looks really good. And you know, yeah, it's just it has a really nice quality to it, and I like this one too. Although I think that it feels a little bit maybe there's maybe a wee bit too much contrast in it. You know, lights versus darks. Um, that anyhow, I'm probably leaning towards this one a little bit more. Um, and yeah, I don't know if you, there's only a few things that I might suggest in here. One is I might make, add a little bit more of a color into these stripes. You know, like by color I mean like sort of take whichever, any one of these colors and maybe tint it out a little bit more. Like for example, if we take this green, just maybe you want a light color it looks like, so maybe just make it a little darker so that it, doesn't look just so white. And what that will also do is it'll bring your background back a little bit, so it's not so, it won't come forward so much. And then these shapes will take over a little bit more. So I would do that. I might make the value change between these guys a little stronger so this star shape stands out. By value, I mean make this a little lighter, or maybe the purple a little darker, or desaturated. You know what I mean? So these edges, can you see how this really stands out a little bit more? And you don't have to have such a big difference, but maybe just a bit more so you get like a crisper outline. I think that's the main thing. I might be inclined to take a little bit of this red and maybe add a tiny bit somewhere else. Maybe not a lot, but just, and what could you do? Like maybe have, this is where outlines can work. You've probably heard me talk about staying away from outlines, but you can add maybe just a really a stroke around any one of these shapes, maybe around here, just sort of a small amount, and use this red or any red really from that part, and that will tie that red in. But I like that way that you've worked with the red here to make this a focal point, so you don't necessarily want to take away from that, but just to create that sense of unity of bringing that color in just a little, like threading it into the design a little bit more, if that makes sense. And in this one, if I went with this one, I would probably make some of the same suggestions. One is I would darken this stripe so it doesn't come so forward. White advances very strongly, and so when you put white in the background, it's harder to do. It's better to have it tinted a little bit so it fades. And then I would maybe make a little more contrast here, like lighten this up so we see that shape a little bit more. So yeah, I think this would work too. I think I just have a preference for this color. It's everybody has color preferences. So choose the one you want, and we can work with either one. So anyhow, good job, and I like the revisions you've made. I think you've really taken the composition to a new level. Let's see here. I have your, here we go. Yeah, these are really very interesting. I don't know if you had any inspiration for these, but this to me really looks a lot like Kandinsky, because of the triangles and then the stripes. Yeah, this is really nice. Both of these are really interesting. I think I can definitely see the similarity between them, but also they're quite different. I'm kind of inclined towards this one maybe a little bit more. I think the shapes maybe feel like they're working a little bit more. This one, it feels like you might have to work a little bit more with the shapes in the background. There might be a little bit too much variety in the shapes. By variety, I mean like too many different shapes. Like maybe if you worked with this one, maybe take the rectangles out and add more diagonals or more circles, Anyhow, let's see what you've got here with your colors. Oh yeah, it's very interesting. So there's your tetrad and your triad. Yeah, really nice. I like the one, this one's a little darker and richer, and this is a little bit lighter. And this one here. Yeah, I really think I like this one quite a lot. There's a really nice sense to the space. So if you don't have a preference, I might tend to go with this design a little bit more. Let's see here. I might just, it looks like, this is a triad, this is a tetrad. So if you go with this one, then I might make your harmonies a little bit more different, like the different hues, or lighter or darker or something. These seem, you know, a little bit similar, like you've got the orange and the burgundy, and the sort of bluish purpley color. So I might sort of play with them so they're a little bit more different, if that makes sense. But I do like the kind of you should look at some Kandinsky, by the way. There's a lot of different types of, let me look at, hold on just a sec, I'll show you the ones I'm thinking of. So here are some of the ones I'm thinking about. Can you see that, like the triangles, the lines, there's like circles. This particular, I think this particular one I was thinking of, but he's got a number of them that are similar. Let's see. Here's another one with a lot of triangles. Yeah, you might be inspired by his work. So I would say maybe just keep experimenting with the triangles or the shapes a little bit more. It feels like almost like this triangle's maybe a bit big. It's almost like I want to see maybe a few more triangles, smaller ones, maybe a few more circles kind of floating through here. I might take out maybe the squares. That feels like it doesn't quite belong. But, you know, the triangles and the circles, I like the kind of crosses, you know, of these lines. So yeah, I would keep experimenting and just make your harmony just a wee bit different. You know, maybe pick totally different hues for this one. You know what I mean? So okay, that's what I'd probably go with this one. I think this could be a good harmony. I like this one, maybe with the oranges and the burgundies and purples. But at this point, I would probably work a little bit more with your composition, and then change your harmony a little bit on one of these, and then just decide which one you're going to go forward with in terms of the harmony. I'm sure you'll make a good choice. And let's see here. So you've got a tetrad and a triad. Interesting. Yeah, you know, to me they both have somewhat similar kinds of moods, and I think that what happens sometimes is when you go with a darker palette, then that kind of overrides a little bit the hues, the symbolic hues, in a certain way, because the darker quality comes through, you know, like of mystery and the shadows of the darkness, and it kind of creates a sort of spooky kind of look to it. So yeah, so I think either one of these could work. I think they both could be good choices. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that both of your compositions are exactly the same, right? So you've got two different ones here. They're similar, but you want them to be at the same for this assignment, because we want to see just how the color is going to affect it, you know, without anything else. I like the stripes you're creating here. I think that's a good idea. I might make the stripes a little more obvious in the sense of adding more contrast to them. You know, like you can see here, we've got a kind of a crisper like division here, whereas a little faded here. So I'd like to see a little bit more of a division there. I would avoid using the textures within Photoshop or Illustrator. They're, you know, some filters work better than others, or effects, but sometimes you can get a really like kind of a look where you just know it just came from the software, and I think that's happening here. So maybe just make that a solid color, or you know, maybe add a gradient if you know how to do that. I think somebody created a gradient at the very beginning, which I thought was a really nice way to create a sense of depth right in here, this gradient. So that might be something to work with. I could see that working nicely in your design. Yeah, so there's some of the same things. Yeah, again, you know, maybe again make these divisions. I love the stripes because I think that adds detail, a sense of complexity to your design. I would probably, in terms of composition, I probably would go with this one if you're trying to choose between these two, because I think the symmetry is a little harder to work with. So I think this is working a little bit better in your design, this sort of asymmetrical look. Okay, don't feel like you have to make the ground green. You know, it can be any color you want. Sometimes when we get stuck on making something look naturalistic or descriptive, it limits our creativity. And I kind of feel like it's not necessarily working that well with your design. Maybe one of them, but maybe you could experiment. And also try to think about maybe how you could distribute the colors a little bit more in the design. You know, like you have like your colors really divided into really distinct areas. So you've got this color, and then this color. Think about mixing it up a little bit more. You know, maybe you'd have a little bit of this magenta color down here, or a little bit of the green up here. That can make your design, it'll create that sense of unity we're looking for, you know. And yeah, and I think that's the main thing too, you know, make sure that each of these colors are maybe represented a little bit more strongly. Like you've got the yellow, green, and the green, and I don't quite see the yellow green in here. I just see maybe that green. So I would play with that a little bit more, you know? So yeah, keep experimenting. Yeah, thanks for, you know, experimenting with both. That's again one of the benefits of the software is being able to do that. You know, it's interesting because I thought that I really liked this one before, and I'm almost leaning a little bit more towards this one at this point. You know, it has, I think there's a little bit more of a sense of openness to the design, which I really like. Um, so I don't know. Yeah, maybe this is, it's always so interesting how that works, isn't it? And color really can really add a lot to a design. So, okay, I'm going to say let's maybe go with this one. Um, yeah, so this one, it looks to me like you've got a complement, the red and green, which I think is interesting choice. Nice choice for this. It's a very dramatic color choice, you know, that complement. And this one looks like a split complement where you kind of, split complements are nice. You get that little bit of an extra hue to work with, but it still has a feeling of the complement, but it's sort of softened up a bit. I don't know. I like both of these. Let's actually open this in Photoshop so we can, let's see if I've got it in Photoshop. Here we go. Oh, no, got the wrong one. Hold on. You know, I think this one is probably one of the things again about the split complement is you start getting a pretty unique color combination. It looks it's like the triad and tetrad to me, which there's a designed quality to the harmony. So, I might go with this. I like what you're doing here with the uh, making the saturated trees come closer to us, and then we go to a darker, low contrast in the background. That's a great way of creating that depth, which we learned back in, I don't know, I think it was milestone 3. So I think that looks really good. You know, maybe, what could I suggest here? I might make the trunks of the trees have a little more contrast. You know, maybe a little lighter, a little more intense. They feel like they're maybe getting a wee bit lost, because, again, because of the low contrast. So I might do that. Um, I almost kind of feel like the stars could go over the moon a bit, or like I feel like I want to maybe spread them out a bit more, just to kind. And why might I say that? Is what happens is it'll maybe unite certain parts of the design. Like right now, it sort of looks like we have this part, we have this part, and then we have this part in terms of the background, more background space. And sometimes when you kind of take something like this and maybe you put a few here and a few here, you actually sort of unite these spaces. So, you know, you might experiment with that a little bit. Um, and yeah, I think that's, you know, the main thing. I might, you know, maybe with these trees, I might make them a little bit different in terms like this overlapping this could maybe be a bit different so that we see the edges. Right now it's like very, like the same hue, you know, same swatch of the green. So if you make them a wee bit different, like, you know, here, how we actually see the tree a little bit more distinctly. So you might want to do something like that there. Okay, well, thanks for, you know, doing all the work to put these different compositions together, and I look forward to seeing your next version, like everybody's. But yeah, I like the changes you made in the design. Yeah, I think this works, you know, works a lot better with this structure, you know, you created here that has this little notch in here. Somehow it brings the space in, and I like the overlapping shapes here. It gives you a lot of possibilities here. Um, and you've got a, let's see here, let's see if I can. Looks like, what am I seeing here? Is this the one you were using? You might just want to mark this a little bit better. I think you marked it at the bottom a little bit more, this one right here. There we go. So this is, oh, this is your tetrad. And you said you had a triad at the top. Uh, yeah, Yeah, so you might want to just kind of clarify that on there a little bit more. Or yeah, your blue, orange, and green. Okay, there we go. Um, you know, it's interesting. Both of these are, you know, quite different. I like the orange and blue here. That's quite nice. I think this is a nice combination. But I also like this one. It's nice too. I think it's a very interesting a change there. Um, I could see you going with either of these. So yeah, feel free to experiment. The one thing I might say with this one here is just, you know, make sure to weave in, you know, this color and the cool color here, this purple, into the design a wee bit more. Like you want to, when you have a harmony, let's say, okay, let's say this is the tetrads. You've got 4 hues, so that's a lot of hues to work in, and you typically will choose like 1 or 2 to be dominant, and then you have the accent colors that, you know, might be these little spots of color. And so you might not have very much of that in your design, but you want to have usually more than one placement of it in order to, again, you know, just bring it into the design and also create a sense of unity. So maybe you could have like this color here, you know, this stripe right in here, you know, this lighter color, maybe it could go in there as well. And same uh, with this color here, like you might weave that in here a little bit more, you know. So that's what I'd work on a little bit more here, and maybe just, it looks like maybe this edge here, you just want to stretch the background into that little gray edge that happened there accidentally. Yeah, I think that's, yeah, it's a nice experiment in color, you know. So yeah, just keep, you know, fine-tuning it a little bit more. I also think I prefer this side as well, even though I think this is a, you know, really interesting colors as well, but somehow just this was your, I think you said, an analogous. Yeah, I think that's a really nice, you know, it works really freshly, and I would go with that one. I think it's, yeah, it's a very good choice. So I don't have too much to say here except just, again, I'd watch this, you know, tendency to place everything just a wee bit inside of the edges of the composition. It's something, I think it's a habit that I think we all should really be, you know, breaking in design, of like bringing things to the edge without pulling them over, you know, taking that next move. I know it's sometimes a little scary because we like to color within the lines, but it'll really, you'll be a better designer if you start experimenting with those edges just a little bit more. And again, all you need to really do is like take this stripe and move it down. Maybe all these stripes could go down, like some could, you know, some shapes can stay inside, some can go out. It's just another way of kind of working with the design. I think that's probably the main thing that I would recommend here, and maybe experimenting a little bit with the stripes. You know, I like kind of the stripes or the kind of outlines around some things, but maybe some of the areas could not have the outlines. You know, I like what you're doing with the outlines. I think it's really great that you're experimenting with the colors within the harmony, but maybe some of them could be maybe a little thicker, you know, or not have them. So you might experiment with that a little bit more. But yeah, I like what you've gone, uh, you know, the direction you're going in here, and look forward to seeing your next version of the design. Okay, complement and split complement, yes, and looking at values of colors. I think that's a very good thing to do, where you've got the darker hues were placed behind and the lighter hues in front. That's really great. You know, it's really just, again, that's I mentioned earlier in the class that I would try to remember what color principles I thought were really worth remembering, and depth, like what you're doing here, is what we learned back in, again, I forget which milestone it was, but that's a really good lesson to have learned in this class. Is, you know, when you place darker or muted desaturated colors in the background, lower contrast kind of shapes, and then put your brighter, you know, higher contrast kinds of parts into the front, you automatically create that nice sense of depth. Okay, so you've got a complement and a split complement. Interesting. You know, I don't know. What do you like? Which one do you like the best? I'm kind of leaning, Normally I lean towards the split complement, but I think in your case somehow the complement seems to be working pretty nicely. You know, it kind of creates a more sort of simple look to it, and there's something about that that I think works really well with your design. Um, hmm. So I kind of might go with that. Yeah, I think it's nicely done. So the only thing I might work with a little bit more here is maybe a wee bit more contrast between the squares here, the rectangles, they look like buildings, and the building itself. Like, you know how you've got a little bit more sharpness here? You know, oftentimes it's good to have things blended, you know, and you want them lower contrast because you don't want them to stand out. But you always want to have your shape maybe just a little bit more evident, so maybe just a little bit lighter of that gray would be all you need. But yeah, I think it's good. You know, I like the smoky sort of atmospheric effect that you have continued to work with. And I like your outlines here too. I think you've done a nice job here at making them very intentional. You know, the shapes, the outlines around these particular shapes. Okay, I think that's it, everybody. Really nice job, and I'll look forward to seeing the next, in our final critique later this week for task 3.